of someone unwelcome crashing a Zoom call?
I think first and foremost, keeping that meeting ID, that meeting URL private or to only those who have registered to attend. So I've seen some folks do that by creating an Eventbrite and then sending it out to everybody who's registered, or creating and using Zoom meetings registration profile to actually get that meeting URL. Because what a lot of the Zoom bombers and the people entering these meetings without authorization are doing is they're just doing a Google search with zoom.us and some other items, and they're finding everybody who's posted it online, including social media, email, websites, and that's how they're actually finding these Zoom meetings. So keeping that as private and as close hold as you can is important. Additionally, if you are a meeting admin, so you are the person who has set up the meeting, your password for your Zoom account should be distinct. It should be just for your Zoom account, and it should be strong. Because if the attacker can get a hold of your account information and log in as you, they can access a lot more of your data. And that's actually really the real concern from like a data privacy perspective, is them actually being able to log into the admin account. So that's use a password that's just for Zoom. It has symbols, it has uppercase and lowercase and numbers. And that's a good measure that's gonna kind of keep the keys to the kingdom secure. The final point for security is ensuring you are updated. If you actually downloaded the Zoom client, and if your participants have downloaded the Zoom application on their phone, on their computer, it's really important that you update it. I'm sure if most of us look at our apps on our iPhones right now, the App Store has a little red icon with all of the things that we're supposed to have updated, and we haven't. Well, Zoom's been getting a lot of attention lately, and they've had to update their systems to secure their application. Well, if you don't update, you don't get the benefit of all of their new security protocols. So it's really important to update and to tell your attendees to keep their system updated. It's as simple as at the end of this meeting, when you close out of the Zoom app, it'll tell you if there's an update. Just hit yes. It takes a few seconds, and it makes you that much more secure. Those are my big three. Raf, you're muted.
Great, good practices. Thank you. So Zoom crashers were an unanticipated threat that, in our community at least, only materialized a few weeks ago that I'm aware of. Even knowing it can happen, it's still a shock. And as it's happening, it can be hard to think of what information to capture. What information is useful to report to law enforcement? Whether it's to identify the culprit or to determine how they snuck in, what are you looking for as an analyst?
So as an analyst, first and foremost, did you record the meeting? Did you record what they were doing? If you didn't start recording, if the whole meeting wasn't recorded, can you start recording when they show up if you are unable to stop them? That also kind of depends on what the content of the meeting is, and if there are children there, and if you just want to close the meeting versus capturing it for recording. Additionally, if a screenshot's all you can get, a screenshot's all you can get. But we really want to see the name and registration information. If you run, if you have a paid account for Zoom, and Zoom is now offering pro accounts, single licenses, if you have a paid account, you have a lot more access to information about your attendees. So if you have that, law enforcement wants all of the information on the Zoom bomber, because it includes things like their device information. It'll include if they named their headphones, what the name of their headphones is, and if they were nice enough to name it with their actual name, that makes it that much easier for law enforcement. That'll have their IP addresses, all of that information that we can use to actually drill down and identify the individual. One other helpful thing is for us to know the security settings of the meeting. What did you do? Was this posted publicly? That just kind of helps us understand how much effort they went to and what other potential violations of the law they committed.
Thank you. That's very comprehensive. The question that we got yesterday from one person when they registered was the advisability of advertising Zoom meetings on your Facebook site, website. So you mentioned Eventbrite. I'll be going over Zoom's registration feature when you create a meeting. I'm guessing the answer is don't post a meeting link.
Avoid the URL, because if you can find it via Google search, sorry, my dog. If you can find it via Google search, they can find it.
Yeah, great. Okay, and then can you give us a peek behind the curtain of what local law enforcement, and I'm emphasizing local law enforcement here, is able to do about hate speech and other hostile behavior in virtual environments?
So what we can do is prosecute and deter and educate, really educate end users to reduce the likelihood of that occurring. But there are numerous federal statutes that apply. Most broadly, the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. And it's a very helpful piece of legislation that basically says misuse of a computer. Very broad, but that makes unauthorized access to a Zoom meeting fall under that statute. I think the two FBI folks can speak better to any hate speech that occurs. But from a simple matter of computer crimes, they were not authorized to access this computer system. That is a violation of federal law. So if they get reported, and we're really kind of encouraging, and I have the FBI people hopefully confirm this, ic3.gov, the Internet Crime Complaint Center. If you report it there, that's going to allow us to combine all of the various instances of this so that law enforcement can pursue those individuals who are doing it.
Thank you very much, Kellen. So that was ic3.gov?
Yes.
Thank you. And then lastly, I just want to see, we've been focusing so much on Zoom because of Zoom's ubiquity, but do other platforms such as WebEx, BlueJeans, Skype, et cetera, have similar vulnerabilities to Zoom? Is there something unique about Zoom that's making it the target?
Yeah, thank you for that. There have been some headlines recently about Zoom having, just beyond people being able to access the meetings, having vulnerabilities that an attacker could exploit, so that no matter what security settings you use, you may become a victim. Well, most apps, everything has this. Zoom is just in the headlines right now because they had 10 million users per day on average in December, and then they had 300 million users per day on average in March. So they had a massive increase in users. And what that does is it makes the attackers and all of the security researchers discovering vulnerabilities focus their efforts on this threat act, on this new app. So it's not that Zoom is less secure than all of these others, it's just that it was suddenly the target. Other apps, if you're using them, you still have to update them, you still have to secure your password, you still have to keep that meeting URL private, because otherwise it can be accessed just the same. Also, with all of these, and kind of one of these other concerns with Zoom, is attackers know you're using them. They're gonna create fake versions. Kaspersky, which is a security research firm, they identified about 120,000 fake versions of Skype and Microsoft Teams and Zoom and WebEx and all of these things we could be using, and they're fake versions of these apps. So that's kind of another security concern to warn your people. Only download these from legitimate app stores. Don't do a Google search and download it from random XYZ Russian app store. Bad plan. Wow.
Okay. Good advice. Thank you. All right. I'm going to jump over to FBI now, and then I'll open it up to general questions when I've just run a few by Liz and Kyle. Elizabeth, the FBI has limited resources, and we realize you can't respond to every incident. But what can faith-based communities expect from the FBI when individuals or hate groups disrupt online gatherings, whether it's a class or a worship service or an informal meeting?
Yes, I want to first off express that the FBI is very concerned about these incidents and take them very seriously. We are committed to protecting the civil rights of all individuals. During this time, it's extremely important that individuals are able to enjoy their free exercise of religious beliefs. Like you mentioned before, it's only been until recently that Zoom bombings have occurred. It's uncharted territory for all of us, including the FBI, especially Zoom bombings in conjunction with religious services. Since There are some Zoom bombings that are hate crimes, which are not only attack on the individual, the victim, but they're also meant to threaten and intimidate an entire community, which my partner Kyle is going to expound further on. I want to express that FBI San Francisco will use all the authority granted to us by federal law to investigate and to hold those who commit these acts accountable for their actions.
Thank you. Sorry, did I interrupt?
No.
No, okay. Kyle, turning to you, what online violations or offenses should community members report to FBI? And let me unmute you one moment.
How about now?
Yes, you're good.
All right, cool. Thank you for the question. So what people need to understand is that the FBI, our jurisdiction is limited, right? The criminal law that we as FBI agents can enforce and investigate is limited to federal criminal law, which is not quite as vast and as broad as, say, the California Penal Code. Being said, as we understand this problem of, we've researched it and looked into the various complaints, we've identified at least 3 different areas of federal criminal law that the FBI could potentially look into in terms of holding people accountable that are taking part in this Zoom bombing practice. For example, if the actors are conducting their disruptions by way of computer intrusions, that is something that our cyber squads could potentially examine and investigate. If the subjects behind these attacks are utilizing child pornography, which unfortunately is becoming increasingly more common, that is something that our innocent images squads could take a look at and examine again for laws that were promulgated in that area. Elizabeth and I work exclusively civil rights violations, and as I mentioned earlier, that largely includes hate crimes. Many of these statutes also protect religious property or houses, the free exercise of religion and religious real property. So we thought when this phenomenon came to our attention in the past couple of weeks to look at how civil rights statutes could be used to hold those accountable. And there's a statute, for those curious, it's section 247 Title 18 of the United States Code, and it's called the Church Arson Act. But there's a section in it. For the most part, this statute was passed to protect religious real property. So that would protect things like a synagogue from a vandalism kind of thing. But there is a section in it that does not involve protection of religious real property. What it does is it protects people's free exercise of religion. And as such, it is not connected to religious real property. And we thought that this would be a section of that statute that might be applicable to a Zoom bombing situation, because of course we're not dealing with religious real property, we're in a cyber setting, right? And so in essence, what that statute does is it criminalizes those who obstruct one's right to the free exercise of religion by force or by threat of force, okay? So it's not just about vandalisms, and it's not just about rude or profane language. The statute specifically criminalizes those who disrupt these types of virtual online services with threats, criminal threats. And by that I mean threats that are threats of serious physical injury. They have to be clear, they have to be imminent, they have to be unconditional, they have to rise to the level of being something that is actually prohibited under criminal law, not just rude or profane language. So we are not talking about religious services that are disrupted by just hate speech, use of the N-word or other racial slurs. We're not talking about just regular pornography being shown when someone takes over the host screen, or just obscenities or general acts of disruption. That's not what this statute criminalizes. What we're looking at are specifically threats of serious physical violence that are used to disrupt these things. As we're looking across the domain and hearing more and more about these Zoom bombing incidents, those would be the ones I think that Elizabeth and I would be most interested in hearing about, because probably those are the ones that we're going to be able to take the most action on.
Thank you. Can you just repeat what those two things are again? The last two?
I'm sorry, did I cut out?
No, I just want, for emphasis, for you to repeat that last, the two that you'd be interested in.
The crimes that we would be the most interested in would be those incidents where the subject uses a threat of serious physical violence to obstruct one's free exercise of religion in the context of one of these virtual online services.
Okay, great. And we've had this discussion before when I've brought certain anti-Semitic incidents to your attention. So when you say specific threats, it's got to be, I'm coming down there to shoot you all. It can't just be, we need another Holocaust or something like that. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. That's a great point. The law, the standard for what constitutes a criminal threat, without getting into all the details and putting your audience to sleep here, it's a high one. And generally speaking, they need to be clear and imminent threats of violence. And like you said, it can't just be what we would call hate speech or rude or profane speech. That's just not going to cut it.
Okay. Thank you very much. And let's see. Elizabeth, let me return to you. What evidence is helpful for prosecuting online hate crimes? Kyle's just given examples of the kind of speech that's needed, but whether it's capturing a screen name or the IP address or email address, what do you find helpful on the federal level in terms of evidence?
Yeah, great question. I think Kellen actually addressed it really well, and I appreciate your comments in regards to that. The most important is getting the actual recording of the actual disruption. Capturing that moment, whether it be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it's helpful for law enforcement to see the beginning and the end, so how it transpired from beginning to end. And by capturing that quickly, it helps law enforcement understand the severity of what just transpired. And the feature is already on Zoom, and so it's important for people to utilize that. As Kellen mentioned, the bare minimum would be screenshots. Of course, officially, we'd like the whole video recording of it, but if you can't get that, just capture screenshots for us. It was mentioned participant logs. I think later on in the meeting, I know in our discussion you've talked about virtual bouncer, which I love that. Hopefully you'll go into a little bit about that later. That person would be tasked with tracking who's coming in and out of these Zoom meetings. Having that information is highly valuable and helpful for us if your religious service has been disrupted. The username, the IP address, device information, like Kellen mentioned as well. I can't stress how important it is for individuals to be security minded. We are all now aware that Zoom bombings are occurring and it's a problem. And now we all need to take advantage and utilize the security measures that have been mentioned and that are on Zoom to plan ahead, so it lessens your chances of becoming a victim. I also want to stress that if you're on a Zoom call and there's a Zoom bombing and you feel that your life is in immediate danger, you need to immediately call 911. They're going to be the first responders. Also, to the extent that you fall victim to a Zoom bombing that Kyle mentioned, that includes a threat of violence or that includes child pornography, we are asking that you report it to law enforcement. And you can report it specifically to the FBI San Francisco Division. And I want to provide individuals with that number. It's 415-553-7400. Again, 415-553-7400. Another option you can do is submit a tip online, and that would come to the FBI. You can submit that tip at tips.fbi.gov. And then I'm going to mention something that has been previously mentioned. For everything else, we're asking that you report it to ic3.gov. ic3.gov is the FBI's, it's the Federal Internet Crime Complaint Center. And so we look at all those on a daily basis. So it's important that those get submitted there as well. And lastly, I want to mention that it's so important that the community helps us in reporting these incidents of bias and hate. Hate crimes, unfortunately, are often underreported to both not only federal, but also local law enforcement. If communities start reporting these more, it enables law enforcement to fully understand the scope of the problem in the community and also to assign the appropriate resources toward preventing and addressing crimes of bias and hate.
Elizabeth, thank you very much. Really helpful. I want to now ask if you see in the bottom of your screen or in your participants list, a blue hand. If you have a question, raise your hand and we'll unmute you and call on you. All right. Greg Murphy.
Hi, thank you. One of the things that we're concerned about with security and privacy is recording sessions that in our context would be therapeutic and have protected health information involved. So we're actually dissuading those kind of interactions to be recorded. Other than the screenshot, is there any other way, if we're not recording an event, that we can collect that information other than just the screenshot of the participant list?
Greg, I'm going to jump in before the panelists and suggest that this is a case perhaps where your people are trained to hit the record button the moment something starts happening,
Okay.
rather than recording the whole session. And so if you're at the ready with the record button, then you're not violating the health considerations and you're still collecting evidence.
That's a good point. Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
Can I just one other follow-up
Yeah.
to that? How familiar is anyone with the telehealth platform that Zoom has put out? And does anyone know the difference in security features between that and just some of the security options that we've been talking about?
Kellen, are you familiar with that?
I'm not familiar with their telehealth platform. I would say just knowing how protecting in general, protected health information, the storage and the form it's stored in, it has to be encrypted. I'm just not familiar with Zoom's offerings, unfortunately.
All right. No, we'll probably have to reach out to Zoom on that one, Greg. Thanks very much, Greg. I'm going to call on Michael Super.
Hi, my question really is, and it's semi-addressed for me, but I work for a synagogue in San Rafael, and currently on our website and our Facebook, we have our URLs for Zoom, and we have our meeting IDs and passwords, which it sounds like are not a good idea. But would it be okay to have a registration link there, even if it automatically accepts, just like the registration link it seemed to do for this call, or should we have some other way of getting it out there? We're trying to reach a lot broader of a spectrum of people, not just our members who we send out emails to. And in those emails, since we're sending them directly, we address them with the Zoom links and the meeting ID and passwords.
Yeah,
Michael, sorry, Kellen, let me just add one thing. I'll turn it to you. But Michael, in the practical part that I'm going to go into after the panel, I'll talk about the registration feature and asking enough questions that you're making a potential Zoom crasher do extra work to register, and possibly, especially if you ask for job title and location, they have to do some research to provide something that might get them in the door. But I'm going to pass it over to Kellen and see what you recommend, Kellen.
Yes. So it really is about raising the barriers to entry, literally in this case, and making it more difficult. So if you post a registration link, that's perfectly fine. Because for anybody who's doing those searches who wants to Zoom bomb, they're gonna then have to register. And if you have that CAPTCHA enabled, so they can't do it automatically, they can't write a script that allows it to just happen without their interaction, that's gonna increase the effort. And honestly, you're probably not gonna be worth it for most folks then. And then if you are, that kind of gives us an understanding of the perpetrator we're dealing with. Now, having your password, if you have a password posted publicly, that's not a password. Because if it's posted publicly, it's not securing anything, and it's just an added field. But if you have any of that posted publicly, what's happening is that these people, they've just written an automated Google search, basically, that just looks for this. It scrapes it into a nice handy dandy document for them, and then it gives them their times. Oh, I've got this meeting at this time that I get to go Zoom bomb. I've got this meeting at this time I've got to go Zoom bomb. So when you've got that information out there, they just get to scrape it and log right in. But if you do the registration URL, it just makes it that much harder. And hopefully they'll bypass you because you're too much work.
Excellent, thank you. Tony, I've unmuted you.
Thank you. Tony Harris from Shar Zahav in San Francisco. One thing I wanted to just address, we're trying to use this to outreach to folks to continue to and be inviting in. So we have this natural tension between trying to bring people to our congregation as well as obviously protecting the services and the meetings and things that we have. Is there any kind of language or things that we should or need to put on our registration from a legal perspective to set that up so that we establish the right barrier in that? And then we were looking both at registration and we were looking at passwords. And one of the things that we looked at was to send the password to our member list, which are the folks that financially support the synagogue, and then to have other people have to send an email to us to get the registration or get the password code for the meeting, you know, and that again ties to that tension. Any comments of best practices or thoughts from others? And I'll go on mute.
Thanks for the question, Tony. Kellen, would you like to field that one too?
Sure. So sending the password to, I think one thing, are you using the same meeting ID, meeting URL for multiple meetings?
I think we have been for our services.
Okay. That's a little, we're really encouraging use of one-offs because then the longer you use the meeting URL, the more time the person has to discover it. But if you're trying, I mean, for accessibility, you've always got that security convenience question. And for accessibility and convenience, I can understand using one meeting URL. In which case, looking at it from, and this is, I mean, it's a risk assessment you have to have, but the idea of sending out the password to a pre-existing list and then having others register, that makes sense to me and seems like a secure option. But yeah, you just got to reevaluate as things change, because that's another thing right now with Zoom bombing and with the effort Zoom is making to secure their platform. Things are changing really quickly. So hopefully it would work. And if it didn't, reevaluate.
Thank you. Tony, I think to your other question that it's important to just have some suitably welcoming language around your invitations, that, you know, you welcome people to services online, et cetera, and note that you're taking precautions to ensure the security of everyone participating, and not make it a threatening statement or legalese or anything like that until, you know, some lawyer in our community comes up with something that they recommend over that. Why don't we run with that? And unless Kyle or Elizabeth want to chime in on language, I'm going to go to the next question.
I will actually follow up on language. Thank you for, I forgot that part of the question. Zoom bombing violates Zoom's terms of service. So you don't necessarily need to include that language for your specific meeting, because the company includes that language. When you check that little box, I read and understand Zoom's terms of service. Any Zoom bombing violates those terms of service.
Excellent. Excellent point. And that also brings around another thing, which is in addition to reporting to law enforcement if you feel threatened, or to FBI if people are committing a crime by crashing your meeting, also report it to Zoom, because you can have someone removed as a user if they're violating the terms of service. All right, now I'm going to go to Jamie Cohen, and you should be able to speak now.
Yep, thank you. Jamie Cohen from Jewish Film Institute here. Thanks for putting this on. Two-part question. One has to do with the webinar mode. Does webinar mode in Zoom act as a security function against Zoom bombing? In my understanding, it helps a bit. And the other question is, we're planning to feed a Zoom webinar into Facebook Live, and I want to know what kind of can of worms we're opening up potentially by doing that as well. Thank you.
Thanks for the questions, Jamie. I'll try and tackle the first one, and then I'm going to look desperately to Kellen for answer on the second one. So as far as the first goes, and now I'm already losing my train of thought. The
Webinar mode.
Webinar mode. I think that depends on what level of account you've got, whether you're able to put something on as a webinar. And Afshin, are you able to chime in and correct me on that?
Yes, you need to subscribe to subscribe at the level where webinars are available to you on your account. As far as security, difference between security features in a webinar and regular Zoom, I'm afraid I have to pass to Kalen.
Okay. Kellen, are you familiar with the differences?
I'm not.
Let me stop you just for a moment. What I understand is that, or at least from the ones I participated in, you can only chat to the panelists. So you can't post anything that everyone sees. And people also don't see you on screen. So from the perspective of someone trying to disrupt a webinar or a Zoom meeting, you're much more restricted as a participant in terms of the tools available to be disruptive. But to the second part of Jamie's question, Kellen, did you have anything on that?
I've never done a Zoom meeting via Facebook Live. On the upside, I haven't heard of Facebook Live being disrupted in this manner, the same way as Zoom bombing. Although with Facebook Live, you do have that question of the comments getting out of control. But I really don't know. You get to discover these and share out to the group.
Great, sure will. Thank you.
We're charting new ground here.
Rafi, this is Afshin. If I may add, some of the features, a couple of the features that you mentioned over the last few weeks, Zoom has made them available for throughout their platform. So you can do that with either one.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that. Greg, I'm unmuting you. And
yeah, I just wanted to follow up. We just opened up a webinar account. We have a number of business accounts now. When you're using Facebook or Vimeo as a streaming platform, the only interaction that can happen from outside is in the chat or the posting comments. It's not like they can interrupt the broadcast because essentially it's pushing out through Zoom, and Facebook is just a platform to push it out for live stream. But you can make comments, and you know that how disruptive that may be, I don't know. We just recently did Yom HaShoah with over 2,000 participants, and did not have any real issues with it. But we did a pre-registration, and we did you know, the waiting room and some of the standard security features. And then I have a quick question. I know that Zoom bombing really sort of hit hard about 2-3 weeks ago, and that Zoom went and started making some of these security features defaults as opposed to opt-in. Has anyone experienced problems in the last week to 2 weeks with Zoom bombing? Because frankly, we've not. We've been pretty secure now that we are doing things like waiting room and passcodes and registration.
Yeah, Greg, we're still getting reports, even with the upgrade in security. Oh, yeah. And part of that is on the user side, that if users don't upgrade to the latest version, if users do not restrict certain capabilities when they set up the meeting, then that leaves the door open. So, you know, another analogy that I liken this to is if you're holding a gathering on, you know, you're in college and someone from a rival college comes to disrupt your party, if you don't lock your door, they're going to be coming in. So there's the precautions that we need to take on the one hand, and then, you know, that was partly a segue to talking about the Zoom bouncer. that you also don't need to be a football player to serve as bouncer. So I'll get to that in the practical measures of when you assign a co-host. It doesn't matter how robust physically that person is. Once you give them co-host privileges, they're going to be able to oust anyone who's disruptive with no problem. Okay, I'm going to just check and see if there's any more hands before we wrap up the Q&A part.
While you look for hands, I'll also kind of address that question on continued Zoom bombing. Not a lot of those folks get reported to us, but I can tell you I'm in some of the chat rooms where people who do Zoom bombing share their Zoom bombing best practices and the links that they're looking for. And they're running really right now off of anybody whose URL and meeting ID and any of that information that they can publicly find. So it is getting harder for them, and they're having to work a little harder, but it's that publicly posted URL.
Yeah, excellent answer, thank you. So the moral of the story is don't leave low-hanging fruit for anyone to exploit. I'm going to go back to the slides now, and with that, let's see, where did it go? I should have been right. There we are. And go into some of the technical aspects of these best practices. And I'll be going pretty quickly, but fear not, I'm going to make these slides available as a PDF, and different people learn different ways. And I find it's helpful to be pointed at which buttons you need to click and so forth. What these slides are actually showing, for instance, to upgrade to the latest version 5.0 on a Mac when you're in the Zoom program, just pull down your zoom.us menu and choose check for updates. And if you're on a PC, you'd start Zoom and just click on join a meeting, or first check your version that's down at the bottom of that dialog. And if it's not 5.0, even if you're not invited to a meeting, just click on join a meeting. And what's going to pop up is this dialog, update available. Of course, you want to click on update, and it will take a moment. But once you've done that, you should see, whoops, 5.0 appear at the bottom of your Zoom interface. So that's step 0 of the 5 best practices. Getting into adjusting your settings. When you are setting up a meeting, if you click over on the left hand on settings, then you'll get a whole host of different options to adjust. So settings is over there. You want to scroll down and get to, let's see, requiring a password when scheduling new meetings. I believe Zoom has made that default now, but it's always a good idea. Another one is to consider disabling the embedding of the password in the link. So if people actually have to enter the password separately from clicking on the link, then that puts one more hurdle in the way of people joining successfully. Now, my mother has not been very appreciative of that in some of the Zoom meetings that I've invited her to. But if you just get people used to the fact that click on the link and then enter those 6 or 8 digits of the password, it's not that big a hurdle to get over once people are accustomed to it. Then scrolling down further, it's seasoned to taste, but something to ensure that you switch off is file transfer. You don't want people putting pornographic imagery into the chat and sending it to everyone. You also might want to avoid private chat unless you trust everyone in the meeting to behave themselves. But private chat can also be something where someone can be quietly disruptive if it's allowed. So disabling that may be a no-brainer for your meeting. And then it may be worthwhile to just disable all chat. So I believe for this Zoom meeting, I disabled all chat. That was my default. It is sometimes helpful to have that chat log going, but for this one, we opted not to have it. Now, scrolling down a bit further, screen sharing is a really critical one. So make sure it's the host only that can share their screen. And then screen sharing capability, we want to restrict that as much as possible, because if a Zoom bomber can come in and share their screen, it's that much more disruptive. And it can be very insidious because if that person is not making noise, their screen, if they share their screen, then all of a sudden everyone's looking at their imagery, which in some cases people have posted child pornography, and it's something that you can't unsee once you've seen it. Another thing to consider is disabling desktop or screen share for users. And here specifically, if they've got an image on their desktop, then that would be a means for them to share offensive material. So disabling that means they can't do that. We've also had a Zoom bombing recently in the South Bay where a presenter had some presentation slides, and one of the crashers in the Zoom started annotating the slides by drawing on them and drawing, offensive imagery. So there's just no end to the efforts that some of these people will go to find ways to disrupt things. Now here is the menu for the screen share. And so once you're in the meeting, you can also adjust the settings and change things once you're in the meeting. But if you've forgotten to adjust the screen share capabilities before the meeting, going to that screen share button allows a host to also change that during a meeting. All right, just a couple more. Virtual background. So you'll notice that I've got a brick wall behind me. That's not actually in my room, but it avoids showing what my room looks like. So virtual backgrounds, if you disable that, it means that people can't put offensive imagery up as their virtual background. So that helps in that regard. It also means that if a crasher doesn't have a background on and has their video on, that law enforcement can potentially use what can be seen in the background behind the bomber as a means to figure out where they are. So when I worked at the Northern California Regional Intelligence Center, there's one guy there that's just really good at finding images online where people have posted on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, and figuring out where a criminal actually lives by triangulating all that imagery. So virtual background hides what could potentially be evidence if a Zoom bomber has their camera turned on. Consider enabling the waiting room. That just lets you see who's about to get in. So I was looking at all your names as you were coming into the waiting room and going, yep, I remember they registered. I remember which organization they're with, and I clicked on admit. So that is another thing that helps monitor things. Even the profile pictures, you'll notice that anyone who didn't have their camera on, you just saw their name. So I disabled, or I had people hide their profile pictures in the meeting, because there again, someone could take offensive imagery or even just a swastika and make that their profile picture. And then even when they're not participating actively, they just show up in the gallery view as a swastika or whatever else they've put on their profile picture, and they've managed to disrupt the meeting already. Okay, here I'm turning now to when you set up your meeting. What I did for this one, for instance, was I clicked on this box at the bottom that says registration required. So that was a very simple step. And using the register feature, also, if you click on questions, you, bring up this nice little list that at first I just had first and last name, and then realized, no, I need a little bit more information. So I clicked on organization, job title, and questions and comments. And I made the, I guess phone is one you could also get, because especially if you're concerned about people crashing your Zoom call, if they leave a phone number, they're probably not going to use their real one. But if it looks like, 111-111-111-1111, then you've got someone who's trying to hide something, and you might not accept their registration and leave them out of the meeting because they're clearly not wanting to play ball. And then that column on the right lets you require which of those fields that you're adding have to be filled out for the person to register. Okay, and then one more thing on registration feature is that you can view the list of people who've registered, and then in that list, you can go in and look at what they've responded with in terms of job, organization, etc. So that's just a further check that people who are trying to disrupt a meeting, if they really want to disrupt that meeting, they're going to have to go to some trouble to come up with something plausible there. And if they give something kind of unconvincing, then you've already got cause to exclude that person from the meeting. All right, the third best practice, appoint a bouncer. So a key thing, and I'm using the term bouncer because that's really the function that we're using that person for, but the Zoom technical term is co-host. So identify a co-host, and so here in my imaginary Zoom call with all sorts of late night personalities, who do I want to be my co-host? I would love to have Stephen Colbert as my co-host. So when I float in the participant list over his name, I go to the More button, and I get a little menu that allows me to click on Make Co-host, and then he's going to be able to mute or unmute people, remove them from the meeting, etc., as needed. Another feature is locking the room. So once a meeting is started, especially if it's a smaller meeting, one where you know the finite people that you want to have in that meeting, go to that security button. If you're the host, you'll have a security button at the bottom of your screen, and click on Lock Meeting. No one is able to be able to get in after that. So if someone's got a bad connection, they really need to be in the meeting, but they're dropping off, don't lock the meeting, or only lock the meeting if you understand that there's a risk that someone who does drop off is not going to be able to rejoin. But that does, going back to the, party crashers, once you lock the meeting, no one's going to be able to get in. So that's one way of ensuring, especially if you've got a family gathering and everyone's there on Zoom, just lock the meeting. It's the only thing that's going to be a problem is if someone's signal drops. And lastly, as our panelists mentioned, it's important to record your call simply for evidentiary purposes. So as I mentioned to Greg, if it's a sensitive call that you're having, you don't want to record health-related information, just ensure that you or the co-host is at the ready to hit record if something untoward starts happening, and then you can save that as evidence. Let me go back, stop sharing my screen. So that covers the tips that I wanted to share with you. We're just coming up on the hour. I just want to see if there's any remaining questions with the couple minutes that we have left. And use the raise hand feature if you would. I see Heidi, I'm unmuting you. Go ahead, Heidi.
Hi, Raphael, and thanks for this. One thing I noticed on the security button in your previous slide is it said there was an option to allow participants to rename themselves. And I'm wondering if that's something that would be worthwhile disabling so somebody couldn't also put something nefarious on there.
That's a great question. So it cuts both ways. There's a limit to how offensive someone can be by renaming themselves something, offensive, because it shows up, but it doesn't scream as much as some of the other options available to them. The reason why I think it's good to have it enabled is because, for instance, we had a meeting at the Federation the other morning. It was the leadership team, and there was someone who didn't even work at the Federation whose name popped up in the meeting. And we're going, who is this person? Well, it was one of our staff members, but they were using their spouse's computer. And so it came up with the spouse's name. They have a different last name. And so it just seemed like there was someone completely different who shouldn't be there in the meeting. And, I'm hypersensitive to this right now. So we asked them to rename to their proper name. So that's really the main reason to allow it, is that if people are using a shared computer, or, if it says John's iPad, you have no idea who John is. So in rules of the road, it's also helpful at the beginning of a meeting to say, would anyone who doesn't have their actual name showing, please rename to your full name? Because then anyone who's a holdout and just insists on it being John's iPad, then that's already drawing attention to them as someone who's not complying with your requests.
Right, and which makes sense. But my understanding is, can't the host also rename?
I believe that that is one of the options available to me. So that's actually how I was able to get Stephen Colbert on my Zoom call.
Okay, I was wondering how you did that. Okay, because also, like, if somebody's phoning in, you're just going to see their phone number, so you won't necessarily know who it is. So that's also a nice way for the host to be able to rename so you can identify everybody.
Yes, absolutely. So that's also something that can be a request, so that, you know, you ask people who've phoned in to identify themselves. You can see which phone number is talking when, you know, the little microphone thing, and then rename them to their actual name as a service to them as participants in the meeting.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Coming up on the hour, anyone else? Raise a hand if you have a question. Well, seeing none, I want to thank you all for jumping on the call with us this morning. I will assemble all the email addresses of everyone who registered and send a PDF of the slides out to you all. Once again, thank you very much. Thank you again to our panelists. I'm going to put a little applause icon on my screen, and have a great day and safe Zooming, everyone.